Hello YouTube, this is Morgan Airspeed Prime here with my next The Promised Neverland anime review. This one's going to be for episode 2, and it was always going to be a little bit of a challenge after, most, I think, noted anime like this have a very strong first episode to kind of get you in. It's usually obviously based on a pretty extended opening manga chapter. And this was the first, I suppose, time getting into just, covering normal thing, the fact that it has to be an adaptation here, in that this episode actually covered the core of basically chapter 2, 3, and 4 from the manga. And so there were elements that, it felt like they were kind of rushing through it a bit, some details that were skipped over. They can always go back to them, given that it is an adaptation. There's always time for that reveal, instead of happening in that moment in between these two scenes, can absolutely happen later. Like, it doesn't have to happen right there. And I think there was definitely a few moments like that from the content that this episode covered. Just with regards to them now, I suppose Norman and Emma now waking up this day and now suddenly realizing all of the normal stuff around them is actually a feature of the fact that it's a farm. That stuff that they just completely took for granted, it's just normal, that's how we live. They now see the kind of darker side of it, that it's actually part of them being, bred to be meat, bred to be eaten. And I liked how they just kind of discussed through it and eventually got down to the fact that, okay, we get all of this, that they want like good quality meat and all, but why are they educating us? Like, what are the tests for? And they come to realize, of course, that obviously the brain is something that the demons seem to really like. And it obviously tastes better when the human is more intelligent, has a bigger brain, and that helps to explain the whole testing procedure and stuff like that that's going on. In the manga, they point out a couple of other little things that I think they may get into later on, in that they seem to be taking the slightly different approach of, like, instead of like Ray and Emma and Norman taking the approach of just directly looking for, like, immediately an escape route and analysing every single thing right now. They're more taking the bigger picture of it, accepting what's happened and more focusing on if we escape, like, how do we get over the wall, rather than, like, how do we get out of the house in the first place and stuff like that. So, in that sense, like, they hit on, I think, most of the points in the way they absolutely needed to. Of course, the manga is always going to have, like, time to it's going to have more detail, because you can have more inner dialogue, which is something that you can't often do a ton of in the anime. Like, you can, but if you do too much of it, it just, like, it doesn't make the anime all that visually interesting. But what I think this episode did very well was creating the tension that basically the first episode causes. That there is this sudden shift for Emma and Norman, that they have now discovered the truth, and it's shocking, and it has, like, changed them completely, but they have to act. They have to come across to Isabella, aka Mom, like nothing has happened. So Norman kind of telling Emma where she's kind of shook up in the morning, smile, is this thing of, like, you have to act like nothing is wrong. You have to act like it's perfectly fine. You're always one of the most cheerful people in the house. It's going to come across so weird if you don't, like, act that way the whole time. And you see the very, like, super tense, like, probably the moment of the episode, where suddenly Mom just, like, stops at Emma in the car door and just, like, stares at her like, I know you did something, but I can't fully prove it just yet, and basically quizzes her to see if she'll, like, break right in front of her. And based on the start of the episode, you think Emma may not be able to stand up to that pressure, but she does, and does a really good job at acting with the whole, like, I love it here, I love you, hugging her, given that this is the person who they've now discovered is actually, raising them just to be kind of shipped off to be eaten. And now she has to act like this is still her mother, basically. And especially where they bring up Connie, I thought that was... and then you see Norman's reaction around the corner of just, like, how sickened he is, that the fact that Mom can talk about it, but also that Emma has to, like, it is a natural thing for Emma to kind of be still thinking and talking about it, so it makes sense for her to bring it up, and she has to do that to kind of get the role that she has to play across. So I think the atmosphere, the tension around that, and just in general that they don't know yet if they want to tell everyone. The plan obviously is to escape with everyone, but it would cause a little bit of panic if they just like immediately told everyone right now. At least that's the impression that you get. So they have to keep it to themselves, and the only one they're considering telling, and they do tell towards the end of the episode, is Ray. And pretty notably, like for the first 2/3 of the episode, Ray is very much in the background. You see him looking at the two of them out the window. He's the one who sort of kind of interrupts the really kind of tense moment to say that dinner's ready, and then they kind of decide to bring him in. And as expected, he is obviously more similar to Norman in that he is more focusing on sort of the facts and the details, whereas Emma is bringing up more of the idea of, no, I want to save everyone, even if it's not, if it makes no sense, if it's impossible, it can't ever happen, I still want to save everyone. And Norman kind of notes that, you know, she was crying because she was more upset about what it meant for everyone else rather than herself, whereas I was actually upset because of what it meant for me. And just Norman basically saying, the reason I'm kind of going kind of a little bit off character here than maybe I usually would, maybe Ray, you'd expect me to be on your side, is because, you know, I respect that approach from her, that she was thinking of others, and I'm going to do the same here, and I'll do everything I can to make that happen. So that was a nice little bit of character development for Norman, just him to kind of admit that to Ray, and kind of show that Ray is actually the one who is kind of, I suppose, less focused on the emotions and more directly on the facts. And even some of the stuff that he brought up, obviously the idea of, like, if this is a farm, extend that thought out. What does that mean for the world outside of this initial farm? That must mean that the world outside is a society of demons, and if we go outside, there's nowhere for us to live. We are the animals, basically, to a degree, so that means that we don't live freely out there, and that seems to be the just, like, closed book kind of situation, that there is no hope in this, with what's going on, but they have to still try, otherwise they're just living there for a few months longer, because obviously they're all going to be shipped out. As we also get explained here, they basically figure out the whole system of, like, why some of them wait till 12, why some of them are shipped off beforehand, in that, okay, obviously there is some set rules where, like, they're obviously shipped off, they're not allowed to grow older than 12, but no one is shipped out before they turn 6, and once they hit 6, basically dependent on their test scores, they're shipped out by order in that way. So that's why the top students are being kept there to allow their brain to go as big as possible up until 12, and they have the highest test scores, so they're not going to be shipped out before that. So that's obviously kind of putting a time limit on the series right now, in that we know all of our 3 main characters are 11, they don't have much time left there, and the immediate thing is that they have to sort of save themselves, but they also know that so many of the people around them are also at risk. So that's why Emma wants to save everyone, and why it is such a kind of shocking moment that right at the end of the episode, like, they've sort of figured all this stuff out, they have an idea about what they want to do, and then all of a sudden, here is a new mom basically added into this. There are now 2 adults running this farm. And it's clearly some reaction from Isabella to everything that's happening, and clearly she knows more than she's sort of letting on. She sort of let Emma get away with it, but, like, I think the implication is basically that mom knows kind of what's going on here, and that realistically, if someone saw what happened, who are the most likely candidates? And it would be the obvious 3: Emma, Ray, and Norman, and she pretty much knows at this point that Emma's probably one of them, and that's why that scene happened in the first place. But yeah, they get a new baby obviously comes, but also Sister Crone arrives as well. So this obviously changes things for them, because now suddenly there are 2 people who can track them. The tracking system was another thing we learned about in this episode, that it seemed that one of them went missing during playtime in the forest, and Mom just opened up this kind of pocket watch thing and knew exactly where she was, and straight away went and got her back. And it was this big reveal for them now that Ray. Sorry, I keep including them as a trio, because obviously by the end of the episode they all know, but at the start it's just Norman and Emma that know. Now that they're on the lookout, they suddenly realize that Mom has this thing that can just keep track of them, and they suddenly realize that this isn't just a simple thing of like when we think we're away from Mom, we are away from her. No, she can basically track us down wherever we are. There's some sort of something inside us that we have to figure out. So immediately there's all these kind of obstacles kind of put into play of like, one, what is outside? Secondly, how can they get up the wall? They have an idea about basically how to make rope to make it happen. But how is it going to work with the amount of people at play here? And that the other very real thing that is brought up by Ray is, how can we all escape? Most of the group is, as they say, under 6 years old, and that includes basically like close to newborn babies and like 1 and 2 year olds who aren't going to be able to be kept all that hidden, and will really kind of slow them down if they do try to escape. But Emma wants to make sure that it's everyone. So, you know, somewhere along the way the plan is going to have to change or something like that. That is a nice intent from Emma, but there will have to be something that kind of changes within all of this. And Ray pointing that out was a very much needed thing, but is also meant to kind of show the difference between the characters, which I thought was actually really well done, even though Ray didn't get a ton of time in this episode. Simply him stating all this stuff at the end kind of shows the dynamic within the group, that Emma is the most sort of caring one, and it's not that she's not intelligent, but she doesn't focus on the facts as much as the other two. Norman is kind of middle of the road, kind of willing to go kind of both ways when he needs to, and then Ray seems to be just completely fact-based in all of this, and shocked that Norman is kind of willing to help Emma with the plan to get everyone out, whereas he's thinking that, no, just a handful of us will escape. And yeah, just I think it's a good setup for stuff still to come, of like they're in the early stages of planning their escape. Now all of a sudden they have to deal with the fact that there is another person in here that they don't know how she's going to operate, let alone, I suppose, how Mom truly operates, because they realize that they don't actually know her all that much. So a lot of figuring out is going to have to happen here, and I think while I think it's hard to beat the first episode just because you have the reveal of the demons and what a shock that is, I still think there were some really good aspects of this episode. As far as the stuff that the manga revealed that wasn't here, I'm assuming they're saving a lot of that stuff up to sort of reveal later on. I can sort of picture in my head how they're going to do it when they get to it. In that, rather than it just being a very quick, here's a cutaway to this character for like 5 seconds to reveal something to you, and it be a little bit of a temporary shocking moment. Instead, if they sort of compile those scenes together as a little bit of a montage that goes along with a maybe like present time in the story reveal, it kind of has a bit more impact because you're kind of compiling it all together, that it's not just, oh, here's this one small thing, then this second small thing. Instead, you kind of add them all up. I'm being really vague about what scene I'm talking about. Ask me in the comments if you really want to know. Yeah, I think that's most of what I want to talk about with this one. I think it's a strong start to this anime. It's a series that obviously I've only recently gotten into reading the manga, but I think the anime is doing a good job at adapting it. There's always going to be differences, otherwise, in a way, kind of what's the point if the anime literally just does it the exact same way? So, I can appreciate why they're trying to not just directly carbon copy every single thing of just, here is every single manga panel, but in motion type thing. But yeah, that's my review. In the comments, let me know what your thoughts were on the episode, but that has been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.